яке плавно приростало у дещо більше. Він привозив їй каву, відвозив о 8 ранку на тренування, потім на роботу, а ввечері знову кава і багато розмов. Вони
Since you made the announcement of the 10 to 12 days, have you gotten any feedback or any officials gotten any feedback that it had a response that Russia is going to do something? Any?
No, I haven't had any response. It's a shame.
Well, hello, that's me again. Today is July 30th, 2025. It is Wednesday, I believe, right? And what you see in the beginning is a combination of Russians using their standoff weapons and basically even wedding in one of the villages in Sumy region doesn't even react. They're, basically nonchalant about this, and because it just, they know Russians do not fight civilians, they don't bomb civilians, unlike it is the case always with NATO. And of course we also hear the Mr. Trump speaking about the fact that he is very, well, he disappointed, let's put it this way, that Vladimir Putin doesn't react to his new deadline. It was 50, then 10, 12 days, now it's 10 days, now it's 9, obviously, because it was, the deadline was issued yesterday. And let me explain. I could have made this whole issue, this 30-minute video, just, discussing the headlines from Russian press, which were made for the internal consumption, so to speak, and for the international consumption, which is absolutely two same statements. But let's start, let's not procrastinate, and let's go and take a look at what do we have. I will start you from the, well, it's essentially the some kind of the not CIA, some kind of the NGOs front, which is obviously, well, it's a foreign agent newspaper which hates Russian gods, the Moscow Times, which is not being published in Russia. You can read it if you want to in Russia, but it is printed in somewhere, Baltic state somewhere. So, and here is from July 15th. It was 2 weeks ago, and this is what Russian officials stated: we don't care. Media react to Trump's Ukraine war ultimatum. And Russian officials and state media appear dismissive of Donald Trump's threat to impose major economic sanctions on Russia unless it ends war in Ukraine within 50 days. Okay, that's fine. So then, the 50 days have been pushed aside, and then suddenly we have now the 10 days. Well, it was 10, 12, now it's 10, maybe tomorrow he will do 5. I don't know, it's difficult for me to say. So, and here's the Russian response to it, and this is really important to understand what is being said. First, we're going first to TASS, telegraph agency of the Soviet Union, famous TASS, which still it's government owned. And so the statement of American leader Donald Trump about the reduction of terms for settlement in Ukraine, Russophobia in Europe, and all kinds of the key points. So, and on Trump's statements, Mr. Peskov, the press secretary of the president of Russian Federation, stated, the Kremlin took note of Trump's statement about the reduction of the time frame for settlement in Ukraine and the disinterest in contacts. Russia, despite Trump's statement, will continue the special operation to protect its interests, but it's interested in a peaceful resolution of the conflict, which Russians have been stating since the start of the special military operation in 2022. So, then, here it is, that's what Peskov says again, this is TASS, a special military operation continues, and it will continue, it just doesn't stop, no matter what kind of the deadlines Mr. Trump tries to impose. Then, of course, RT repeats the same thing, and look at this, read attentively, this is what Russians telling, that Trump issues 10-day ultimatum to Russia, yesterday, and so he again, Mr. Peskov takes about taken into account Trump's statements, and Russia will still continue its military operation. but it also remains, which it always was, committed to the peace process to resolve the conflict around Ukraine and to ensure our interest in the course of this settlement. If Mr. Trump doesn't understand what are those conditions, I mean, I don't know. Russians have been on it for essentially 4 years, since, well, almost from December 2021, when Russian Foreign Ministry issued what was called then an ultimatum or peremptory type of the conditions, the conditions which you cannot essentially accept, so that the whole process starts and it is done deliberately. Well, yeah, it might have been done deliberately because Russians are damn serious about their national security. And in this particular case, what can I say? I mean, doesn't matter what Mr. Trump says. And especially if he tries to impose the secondary sanctions on India and China, well, 100% tariffs, that's the only weapon the United States has. Now, in China already, from the best of my knowledge, so since this morning, I was doing another podcast, China said, you know what, they told the United States to go pound sand. And India, I don't know, we'll see how India reacts, albeit some officials already stated that India will continue to, you know what, follow its own national interests and its energy policy. And India's energy policy has a huge factor in it of the Russian hydrocarbons. And so gas and oil and what have you, all kinds of other products made out of this. So when you look at this, and it's just like, what is he trying to accomplish? Well, Mr. Trump himself is on record stating that he doesn't even know if it's going to affect Russia. Yeah, it's not. And obviously, Mr. Bessonnet, who thinks that he is such a great economist or financier, he better start learning about what Russian economy is and how it all operates, especially for the country which sits on the third of the world's resources, essentially, and everybody needs those resources, including, by the way, the United States. So, well, what can I say? At least Mr. Trump says that Melania Trump likes Mr. Putin. Okay, I remember just recently he was saying that, or somebody was saying that Melania actually doesn't like Putin. Now, evidently, and we know that First Lady of the United States, she's a Slavic. You know, some people say they're Germanic, Slovenians. Who knows? Who cares? They have obviously a strong, you know, Slavic, basically trait in them, and so. Can she be well, sympathizing to Vladimir Putin? Why not? Both are Slavs. You know, so it doesn't mean that Slavs necessarily have to sympathize with each other. But Melania is a smart woman. She is a class act, actually. And anybody who writes all things about her, let's not go there. Most of it probably will be some kind of the paparazzi BS, and this is how they live. That's how they make living. But yes, First Lady definitely knows who Vladimir Putin is. They know each other, and yeah, Mr. Lavrov also knows Melania Trump. So she is First Lady, for crying out loud. She gets around, okay? She knows powerful people and this most powerful people in this world. So, I mean, there's nothing wrong if she has this, you know, sympathy towards President of Russia. Very many Russian people admire First Lady of the United States, and I mean sincerely, I do. And there are all kinds of the bad mouthing her, but let me put it this way: she is the most beautiful thing which ever, you know, basically adorned the White House. I mean, at least on my lifetime. So Laura Bush was actually a very pleasant woman, but Melania is just, you know, she is, wow, you know. So that's what I wanted to tell you about those all kinds of the how to say it, sanctions, if you wish. Meanwhile, we have all kinds of things happening in the public sphere and in terms of the special military operation. And obviously, I want to address something which everybody who are Westerners may not understand. This data, so to speak, which allegedly Euromaidan press started circulating about Russian losses. Yeah, it's ridiculous, it's all BS. But here is the thing which people didn't understand, that it was a really cruel joke on them. And look at this attentively. Out of those losses, Look at the very bottom of it. They also annihilated, as you can see yourself, the special equipment. 3,935 of special Russian equipment they annihilated. And this was their telltale sign that it is all BS, but it was obviously to confuse people. Believe me, I'm pretty sure there are some analysts in CIA and in Pentagon who took it seriously and said, oh my God, definitely in American press, because they are stupid as stumps, all of them without exception. So, and what is underlined here? You see, there's some kind of house, some kind of whatever thing which, on the sleds or something like this. Okay, these are the characters of Russian fairy tales. What you see, it is the hut on the chicken legs. This is one of those. You see, this is Baba Yaga, famous, witch of Russian forests, lives in it. And yes, this is the hut on the chicken legs and runs, and it can turn around, and obviously it features, everywhere in Russian folk tales. And then, of course, there's another thing. This is, of course, is the famous Russian hut or Russian house type of the oven. Stove, essentially. You bake things in it, and it's famous Russian character Yemelia, who is very lazy, and he doesn't do anything, just lays there, because you can lay there and sleep on this warm, stove. And guess what? He is known as a lazy guy, but when necessary, he makes this stove, as you can see yourself, on sleds, and it moves. And, he's also the character of Russian fairy tales. And so that was the sign that actually it was a jest. It was done in jest. It was joke. And I'm not even sure that it was Euromaidan press or whatever the hell the Ukrainian propaganda outlet was doing this. But yeah, now you can see yourself what happens when you do not know the Russian culture. And yeah, many people bought it. The same as many people bought it, and I already pointed out about the allegedly, which was 2022 actually, that Iran sold 40 gas turbines to Russia. And Russians already on 2022, they completely debunked it. There was nothing like this. Russians produced their own gas turbines of the very high quality. That is why Russians kicked out Siemens out. And so, but yeah, this is what actually circulates in all those alternative media, or for that matter, all kinds of the social media environment, so to speak. And people believe this. So, but let's go now to the real losses, and this time losses of the Ukrainian side. And these ones are damn serious. They are from Russian Defense Ministry, which is collected by the serious Russian bloggers. I'm not talking about what is called military bloggers from Russia. Most of them frauds, military, and most of them actually shadow assets of the Ukrainian special services. But the point is, this is official data. And as you can see yourself, if we take a look at basically what we have today, or rather yesterday, you can see yourself, it's pretty much consistent every day. And another two MLRS, multiple launch rocket systems, have been annihilated by Russians. 236 drones have been launched at Russia, and yeah, a couple of them hit actually the apartment blocks. This is what they do. I mean, in Ukraine, they hit civilians. Unlike it is, as you saw yourself in the beginning, where the wedding proceeds, because they know Russians do not attack weddings. Unlike it was the case in Afghanistan or elsewhere. We know what I'm talking about, right? So, and among all this thing, obviously you are welcome to go to my blog and read about it. And also I would strongly suggest you to read actually Larry Johnson's blog, his latest posting about why American, basically intel and military professionals lie about Russian losses. Well, it's called the butthurt, and it is called the severe professional jealousy and envy. And because of that, they cannot accept the fact that the way Russians fight and the bunch of all kinds of the so-called military sites, like, task and purpose, and what have you. Most of them, they write all kinds of garbage about the special military operation, and it is really funny when you read some kind of the reports by U.S. Army. What kind of lessons did they learn? They didn't learn much. They learned some outside, shallow tactical minutia, which is connected to drones or what have you. And yeah, we developed tactics. No, you didn't. And I explain it all the time, because without data sets, and the United States doesn't have access to those data sets, which Russian army has on the combat employment of troops and technology, so you will learn very little, only outside, outwardly appearances, then maybe, and that will not be enough. Just to demonstrate to you, I wanted to show this, these photographs long time ago. Well, it happened about a couple weeks ago. Do you know what it is? Well, if you think that it is some kind of mine, I have actually a bridge to sell you. This is the result of the operation of one of the engineering units of Russian army, which literally dug tunnel, which, as you can see yourself, and you can see yourself tracked equipment there, which, well, guess what, led to the Ukrainian positions on the one of the operational axis. Why did Russians do that? Oh, the Russians did this because they said, okay, we're not gonna risk our personnel, and Russians have wonderfully favorable kill ratios, 1 to 20 probably. So, and what they said, well, we're gonna dig the tunnel, and we're gonna push the motor rifle battalion through it into the rear. And guess what? They did. How does it happen? Very simple. It's pretty much almost the repetition of the Operation Pipe, which of course saw the Russian special forces and people like from Akhmat and from the 155th Brigade of the Marines and all kinds of other people getting into this pipe, form a gas pipe, and then of course appearing out of nowhere in the rear of the Ukrainian troops. And after that, that's pretty much was the wrap up for the Kursk adventurism, which was conducted on the instructions and so-called planning by the United States Army and British Imperial General Staff, I think. They are called differently nowadays. So what they do, they just push the battalion through it. Then by the time they come to the exit, which they need to create exit, they explode it, then everything rushes out there, and then you know the result. It's always going to be bad for the troops, where they have the battalion, for example, or at least even company is enough to create a havoc, I mean, in the rear. So, and that's what Russians do. And that is why, for example, posting by Larry in terms of these constant lies by the so-called American military experts, most of them are not experts, or intelligence analysts, most of them, not all, are not real analysts, are just plain simple propaganda, which well covers up sour grapes, big time sour grapes. And if that hasn't been enough, so there is another thing which we have to keep in mind when talking about special military operation, that actually I want to get you back to the front line. And as you can see yourself, this is the event of the 2 days ago, and even Ukrainians are trying to, well, how to put it, not cover it up, because Russian intelligence, recognized, detected, and then identified their basically the range where the on the base of the 168 separate motor rifle brigade, where they were preparing all kinds of special forces near Chernigov, in Chernigov area. And as the result, you can see yourself the arrival of the two Iskanders. One Iskander with a cluster munition, and another will just play a classic, Iskander. And as the result, people say 200 plus have been killed, KIAs. How many wounded, we don't know. But as you can see yourself, Russian drones operate with impunity very deep into the Ukrainian territory, and that just merely underscores the situation, which actually, if you take a look at famous Soviet Kukryniksy artists, who were doing their propaganda during Great Patriotic War in the Soviet Union. You can see yourself, this is from 1943, and this is reminiscent of the mobilization in Ukraine. You see what they're showing for the German, for Wehrmacht and other so-called Axis troops. Yeah, you can see yourself, the guy who is basically old, blind, have no one leg, but the guy, the recruiter who looks like Hitler, Hitler says, yeah, he's good. The next, okay, so, and that's what is this mobilization was about already in 1943, when it was clear that Red Army will march on Berlin. It was a long way still, but yeah, everybody knew that the Nazi Germany and its Axis allies lost the war. So, and this also reminiscent, not reminiscent, is actually exactly what is happening now in terms of the mobilization in Ukraine. And obviously, yeah, they capture just, yeah, 70-year-old man. Can you imagine what kind of soldiers those are? So, anyhow, and then we get to the other thing. Service of the Foreign Intelligence, Russian SVR, already stated about this secret meeting in Alps, in Switzerland somewhere. Yeah, British and French and Germans, they met there with the Americans, I believe. They talk about how to remove Zelensky from power, and they want, of course, Zaluzhny. Well, Zaluzhny is a, well, butcher. He is... he's a loser, but yeah, he's the guy who probably would become the chief of Pentagon if need be, you know, or you know, I don't know, just he is a loser in every single respect. But look at this. This is what already being distributed. Yeah. You see Zaluzhny photo? Well, yeah, Dwight Eisenhower, obviously, before the presidential elections in 1952. Mr. Zaluzhny. No, it's not Photoshop, I think, but that's what already actually the Ukrainians are basically running in their public environments. As you can see yourself, I mean, I'm sorry, I said, didn't say, no, it's photoshopped, but this is basically harking back to, well, Mr. Eisenhower becoming a president of the United States, and this is the kind of parallel. The Ukrainians love to draw parallel with great nations, and as you can see yourself, Mr. Zaluzhny looks like Eisenhower here, right? So that's what is this happening right now, and they try to substitute one war criminal with another. And so if anybody thinks that that will have any kind or produce any kind of the impact on the Russian decisions of how to deal with Ukraine, I have a bridge to sell them. So, but that's who those people are. And before I go, I want to actually touch upon the very interesting situation. So, and this is the latest Rand, yes, of course, Rand, yeah. A Rand report which says United States Navy force structure, the challenges of global crisis response. So, and it's compiled by Bradley Martin, and yeah, you can, obviously, once you have any so-called scientific or program paper which references Mr. David X as the military expert, you can tell immediately Rand is a bunch of frauds, which they are, who understand very little about the modern warfare, but still they write about this, you know, a situation with the U.S. Shipbuilding industry. And guess what? The summary, it's a pretty boring paper, but look at this. The summary makes actually some interesting points, and look what it states. We really need to keep in mind that, as you can see yourself, it's just, 13 days ago, that the author of this report addresses the mismatch between the challenges that U.S. Navy is likely to face in the international arena over the next decade and beyond. Navy is likely for structure. Over several decades, the US Navy force structure has gotten smaller, although the overall capabilities of its ships and submarines have improved and expanded. Obviously, it's a normal evolution process. So, and they talk about the considers potential for structure shortfalls and suggest possible adjustments. What adjustments do they suggest, the authors of this report? And look at this. This is very interesting. So, and I think it's remarkable. Key findings. The US Navy historical mission included presence and crisis response below the levels of a general war. These historical missions have provided options for decision makers throughout the Navy's history. Okay, sure, yeah, it's they then talk about the PRC, you know, China invested in maritime military, and they talk about the Navy's force structure is purportedly optimized for a major conventional battle, but military exercise results have cast doubt on the actual relevance of much of its force for such a campaign. That is a wowzer. This is the thing which I was writing about for, I don't know, second decade, that United States Navy is not designed for the modern warfare. It is still an impressive Navy, and especially its submarine force, but I'm sorry guys, situation changed. And suddenly, he writes about this. Small surface combatants may have significant value in crisis response and presence. However, the industrial base is not well positioned to produce them. Oh yeah, we know the situation with the, of course, Fincantieri and the new frigate for United States Navy, which is, of course, now, oh gosh, 36 months delay, over budget, and nobody knows what they want to do with it. And it is not small combatant. The displacement of this small combatant, the full displacement of this frigate by Fincantieri is around 8,000 tons. So, no, we're talking about the small combatants which look like this. And here's the issue. As you can see yourself, it's one of the Russian Navy small combatants, which are, this is from a few years back, when the two of those Project 2280 small missile ships, as you can see yourself, armed with a pretty impressive navalized Panzer air defense and carrying 8 kind of either Caliber or Onyx missiles, went to sea, you know, to Europe. And so these are the type of the combatants, well, the US Navy was thinking about. But guess what? If you go back to Project 60 by Elmo Zumwalt, and if you take a look attentively at what was in the Project 60, including small missile ships like Pegasus, hydrofoil, you know what, they were successfully killed by the, you know what, gigantomania of the US Navy, together with sabotaging own anti-shipping missile development. So they also continue that the Navy is unable to meet the sustainment demands associated with a large and dispersed force structure. Or absolutely, remember, I will remind you this picture again, the single unit, the single combatant, be that submarine or the frigate of the Gorshkov class, with the present Zircon, which is already in, not in IOC, it's serially produced and deployed, it can cover the enormous, actually, ground, and yeah, it can sink anything there, including, as Mr. General Paul von Riper did during Millennium Challenge 2002, when his Red Force sunk 16 Blue Force naval combatants, including 1 aircraft carrier. So after that, of course, those famous exercises have been stopped, and they said, no, this cannot stand, you know, because, yeah, how could it be? And Mr. von Riper correctly stated, just go screw yourself. This is not real war. You are playing it. You are merely trying to confirm your biases and your doctrine, which that doesn't work. So, and the same goes here. And so they talk, if the Navy decides that they need small ships, it might be necessary to change the emphasis of builders' yards. This change would be at the expense of the larger ships that are being produced. Well, the larger the ship, the fatter and more prestigious the target it is. And so, after that, he concludes that existing presence requirements are unrealistic for the Navy force. They are not realistic not only because of the quantity, they are unrealistic because of the operational issues and actual threats which come from the, as you might understand, anti-shipping cruise missiles and all kinds of other type of the flying things and flying objects such as the drones. And yeah, so suddenly we are talking about what I've been worrying about, obsolescence of the whole naval force, with the exception of their actually submarine force. And so they talk about that, yeah, the Navy should use the domestic industrial base to the extent that it can but should be prepared to use allies and partnership construction capabilities for small combatants if the U.S. industrial base does not support fulfilling this requirement. The Navy should develop, obviously, concept of the unmanned vehicles. Everybody is doing this right now. But look at this. If you read all those summaries and key findings, suddenly, small combatants. They want small combatants. Why do we want small combatants? Well, remember this? Well, Mr. Late Captain Wayne Hughes, a genius, operational and tactical genius of the U.S. Navy, when he wrote this book, he was writing about those small Cushings, small missile-carrying ships, which actually, he describes this scenario in this wonderful book, which I strongly suggest you to read, and which is actually today as actual as it was actually 23 years ago. Guess what? Those Cushings were the guys, small combatants, which wreaked havoc on the enemy forces. And suddenly somebody is speaking even through Rand, and we know Rand is basically, they just, well, they create the studies, if you wish, the way they are told to. So somebody is beginning to think in the Pentagon that, yeah, you have what? What is there? Even the single Arleigh Burke class flight, third flight destroyer. It's $2.5 billion, I believe. And its defenses against modern missile weaponry. So this is what I, pardon me, wanted to tell you today, guys. And as always, in the end, those who like what I do, please subscribe to my channel. And those who can afford it, please support me on Patreon or buy me a coffee and tune. So have a nice rest of the week, and I'll talk to you later, guys. Bye-bye.